Welcome to Switching On Electrified Skills, the podcast that sparks your curiosity and ignites your passion for a career in electrification. I'm Deepak Farmer. Join me on this electrifying adventure where I connect you with industry leaders, visionary education providers, and pioneers driving the electric revolution. Discover the world of skills, jobs, and community, gaining actionable insights, inspiring stories, and the latest developments. Welcome to another episode of Switching on Electrified Skills. Thank you to our guest who's joining us today, John Yarham, who is the CEO of the Enterprise Company. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
So tell us a little bit about the organisation, right, and a little bit about your role and yourself.
Great. Yeah, sure. And well, thank you for the invite today. I'm really excited about it. We're the national body for careers education across England. So our mission is to inspire ultimately every young person across England to find their best next step. And we do that through working with all of the secondary schools and FE colleges and training providers across the country to ensure that they are delivering outstanding careers education to their young people.
Excellent. And your role as a CEO is primarily focused on?
So my role is focused on making sure that we've got partnerships across the country in place with all of those schools, all of those colleges, lots of local authorities and combined authorities across the country, and fundamentally employers, to make sure we're connecting all of those people so that they can deliver the best careers education for young people.
It's quite well established, the organisation. I mean, I note that you've got over 4,000 schools and colleges already, as part of that network. I mean, if we'll unpack that a little bit later on. But yourself and your career so far, how have you ended up as CEO of this amazing organisation?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's something. Careers work has fascinated me for a long time. I've been involved in it for a long time. Primarily, if I go back, thinking about my own journey in school and leaving school and going into further and higher education. And I'd be interested in your story as well, Deepak. But I mean, mine was being told quite consistently that all you needed to do was, get your qualifications and it would all work itself out. And in reality, it didn't. When I left university, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't really have any connections as such because of my own sort of background. I didn't have an insight into the world of work, and I found that really tough. And did a number of jobs, but none of them particularly fulfilling to start off with. So actually thinking about how can I change that? How can I work to equip young people with a better understanding of what the world of work is something that I think is really, really important. And yeah, I mean, sort of just sort of thinking about your own journey into this. How's that?
I mean, my one's less qualification based, more, I think, reassurance was probably a little bit more of my journey. I mean, I was the one that, the teacher said wouldn't amount to anything. Right. I was the one that said, nothing's going to happen. Right. I literally left school at 16, with the normal, okay, you did okay at GCSEs, but you're not really going to be doing anything else. And I was out on my area for about a year, just trying to figure it out, working jobs, trying to figure out what's going on. But as much as I had many teachers in my high school who said I wasn't going to amount to anything, I also had that one teacher, right, who happened to be in Barking College in East London, who happened to see that I was good at a particular set of things, mathematics and drawing, and said to me, what about engineering? Engineering didn't even come across, at school level. It was simply just a, thing that we, the normal typical English, math, science. And he joined the dots up for me, believed in me, and, I did my path and then ended up at university and started being an automotive engineer eventually. But you yourself, your organisation has such a line with that many connected schools into these spaces. I guess, what is the landscape like now? I mean, there was a time and place where, or my time and place where those sort of things happen too often, kids being dismissed because they weren't the typical frame, right? opportunities not being given to them because they were coming from a different type of background, different culture, right? What sort of things are your organization doing now in terms of trying to support students and kids and the people that are really the real end users of this sort of organization?
Yeah, well, I mean, firstly, I sort of think your journey is fascinating as well, and I think everyone's is, and that's why for me this is so exciting to be part of this. Because and just one of your earlier comments, Deepak, was about the longevity of the organisation, the reach of it. I mean, we have now been around for 10 years, and I, coming back to your question, I don't think there's ever been a kind of golden age for careers work, but certainly 10 years ago, when we were established, it was a particularly sort of bleak time because all of the arrangements that had been in place before that had been kind of cut, and nothing had really replaced them. So we started out as quite a small organisation in terms of the level of government investment, but with a very clear mission to kind of grow that over time, in terms of the impact that we're having. So what we've seen, in answer to your question, is it better? Is it better than your experience? Like, we've got lots of evidence to show that more schools and more colleges are doing a lot more work in terms of preparing young people for their future. And we know that because there's been in place roles, so careers leaders in schools, having somebody at a senior level that's really responsible for this piece of work, and then a framework. And that framework is called the Gatsby Benchmark. So they've been in place as well for 10 years. And they tell those schools and colleges what great provision looks like. So there's a kind of gold standard for them to aim at. And that says, if you're doing these 8 things, these 8 benchmarks, you're going to be delivering a far better experience for your students than the one that you receive, which sounds like it was, it's almost it was obviously your good fortune, but in your hard work, but it was also that kind of luck of having that one teacher that believed in you. We want that to be far less based on luck and circumstance, and more based on just a system that's in place across the whole country. And we've seen that kind of level of activity that those schools and colleges are doing increase year on year on year. So, yeah, I think it's a story of progress, but there's still a long way to go.
I think that's quite interesting because, you know, I have my experience obviously, but obviously I'm a father now, right? I have a 7-year-old kid, and so quite often interacting with the schools, and I have to say that things have changed to a much better degree. There are those different roles and responsibilities, safeguarding, diversity, the inclusion, SEN, so many different things that are available to students now. But I still feel that as much as there is desire, right, to support people, kids in school and people in education, there is still those things that don't change, which is basically your constraints, which I think have gotten a little bit worse in the availability of a teacher's time in the classroom, to 30 kids that are there, being able to support, because a teacher doesn't become a teacher because, they just said, we're going to have long hours, right? We love long hours and we're going to love marking. No, they're there because they want to invest their time into students and pupils. And being a teacher myself, that was something that was very, very important to me, more than the paperwork anyway, right? How is your organization, working to support the ecosystem in general? And what are the real tangible activities that you're doing that are making a difference today?
Really important point. So I agree with you in terms of the tough environment that teachers have to operate within. And our mission is to try and make it as easy and as straightforward as possible for teachers to support their students with their career development and to take that best next step. So that involves us supporting them with training. It involves us supporting them with connections to employers, and that's something I'd like to kind of come back to because I think it's really important, that employer voice, bringing that in to the classroom increasingly, removing some of the direct burden on teachers by surrounding them with other professionals outside the constraints of the school or college that can support them on this journey as well. We provide them with digital tools as well. So I think it's going with the recognition that schools and colleges are pressured places. They are there's a lot of constraints in terms of time, resource, um, but there is no shortage, in my experience, of ambition that those places have for their students, and it's tapping into that ambition, but then supporting those institutions and those teachers with the ability to kind of go further in supporting their students.
And with regards to, these schools and colleges, I myself was, deputy head teacher for a college at one point in my career. And over the last few years, we've seen a huge emergence in the demand for particular type of skills. May they be engineering, but within different fields, we talk about electrification and electric careers, sustainability, net zero. But the conversations that I'm still having are very much about, oh, we didn't know, right? We didn't know that the ecosystem existed, or, our role is to get people into jobs as opposed to in this area where there's lots of prosperous careers. And I think that comes down to leadership, right, in schools and colleges to a degree, and trying to bring those messages out. How are you connecting with those leaders in schools and trying to give them the knowledge about effectively the demand for the particular type of skills?
Really important point. So I mentioned earlier about the importance of the careers leader role, and I think the name is particularly important because this isn't about somebody at a relatively junior level within the institution trying to do their best at the margins of the institution. It's fundamentally it's about leadership, and this is where we have a program that involves governors, it involves head teachers, it involves trust chief executives, all being involved in understanding how the work of careers can fit into the fabric, if you like, of that institution, the mission of it, and that's been really successful. So we have lots of engagement directly with those different people and different leaders. The role of business that I've mentioned already touched on is also important because of the kind of credibility, the heft that the business brings, and that's where our program of enterprise advisors. So we've got about 4,000 business volunteers going directly linking with schools and colleges. Those business volunteers are really important in having conversations with the leadership of those places, not just at an individual careers advisor kind of level. It's actually about how is your institution working to support the best interests of your students' futures. So quite a number of different areas. I think is a really valid and important point that you've raised there, Deepa.
And do you select the business leaders that you work with, or do they come to you? I mean, we've got lots of listeners who are business leaders, and they now will be aware of the organization that you will work for, and also what your mission is. But I'm a strong believer in that kids, especially at that age, are highly susceptible to what they see, and having good role models. How does the career and enterprise organization work to select the right business people, the right role models, and what role do you think that the role models have to play in the future of careers?
Yeah, I mean, there's a saying, you can't be what you can't see, and I think the importance of role models is very significant, and that's why we have grown that business volunteer base. The fantastic group of individuals volunteering their time to be part of this. I think it shows that sort of level of energy, enthusiasm, desire to support the next generation to take their best next step. And so that is really important. So one way to get involved if you're a business is to support the Enterprise Advisor scheme. We also have businesses that are connected at a slightly more strategic level in their local areas. So every part of the country has a partnership of schools, colleges, businesses hosted by the authority in that area that are working on this agenda. and each of those areas has what we call a group of cornerstone employers. Quite often they are STEM employers, because of the importance of this agenda in places. So again, in terms of that opportunity to get involved, that's another way. Joining your careers hub as a cornerstone employer is something that will certainly appeal and be relevant to a number of the businesses that I guess are listening to this podcast. But finally, we've also got something called our employer standards, which are equivalent of the Gatsby benchmarks for employers. So it's a way of saying, if you want to get more involved in careers education, these are the standards that you should be aspiring to. And it's a very quick and simple way for a business to kind of look through a set of standards, self-assess against those. It takes about 25 minutes. And as a result of that, they can see what they're doing really well, but also what they might need to focus on to kind of do more.
That's a really pragmatic way of doing it. That's really brilliant. And I think that there'll be a lot of businesses who will be really eager to, connect and try and take that path. Over the last 10 years or so, we've seen there's been a reasonable amount of sort of light being shed on the importance of STEM subjects. However, we've also seen a change and moving the STEM into STEAM, right, which is introducing the arts. And a lot of the employers, many guests that we've had on the podcast, have talked about, the creativity, right, elements of, doing, the different types of STEM areas that you work on. How important, or what are you trying to be able to do in terms of introducing the idea that creativity itself is also a huge important part of really exploring innovation and supporting new markets and new innovation and new nascent markets that are emerging, and the careers within them. Have you seen a change in that space?
Well, I think it's a really important point that you're raising, and for me it links to what I would call essential skills. So some people call them soft skills. I don't particularly like that, because I think when I speak to businesses and when you look at all of the evidence from across a number of sectors, not just the electric sector, but a number of sectors about what the needs of business are for their future talent, they're fairly consistent in terms of some of the skills that require, and creativity is one of those that consistently comes up. So we undertake a survey of young people about their understanding and their confidence in a range of those essential skills, and we base that on something called the Skills Builder framework, which includes creativity as one of those essential skills. About 250,000 young people undertook that survey last year. We were on track to kind of get a greater return this year. So it's the biggest survey, recurrent survey of young people's views going. And what we see is that young people have greater degree of confidence as they mature in those different skills. So something is clearly working. But what we also see are some disparities as well. So young people from poorer backgrounds have less confidence. Girls have less confidence in every year group. So there are some really important areas that I think we still have to address in terms of equipping all young people with those essential skills, which, as you said, Deepak, includes creativity as one of them.
Brilliant. And you just mentioned that you don't like the word soft skills, and I assume you replace it with essential skills. Why do you think? Why is that? Why do you not like the word soft skills particularly? And I totally agree with you, by the way. Right, and I would love to hear your thought on that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a pedant over it. I would if somebody's using it, I'm not going to correct them. So apologies if that came across in that way. But because I think most people understand what soft skills mean. I think essential skills elevates it to the position that it should have, which is that they are so often seen by employers in particular as something that is essential for them. I often hear employers talking about we can train the specific skills for individual roles, but what we want are young people coming into our workforce with a basic level of ability and the importance of an attitude that enables them to flourish in our workplaces. And that involves problem solving, that involves creativity, that involves clearly literacy and literacy and numeracy as well, but it involves a broader range of things, and that's why I feel essential skills is a more befitting title.
I think that's a really good way to put it, and I will definitely be changing it in the future myself now, because I think you're right. We've elevated it to a certain point, and saying soft skills tends to sort of almost be dismissive of the idea that it's personality based. And yes, it is to a degree, but it comes down to experience, and to employers, everyone that I speak to is now about it's essential. But also, I think it says a lot about the individual, right, in terms of having those essential skills. One thing I'd like to get your thoughts on is that, we hear often that when a job is posted, or a job or a recruiter is trying to find somebody in a particular field, especially within the new nascent markets like electrification or net zero, that when they do that, they're getting easily 90% of applications coming through from international markets as opposed to UK based candidates. But also, one thing on top of that that's important to probably, get your thoughts on is that they're also saying that they're better. The international markets, the caliber of students or caliber of applicants are better. I have my own thoughts on that. Why? What do you say to that?
Well, there's a lot I think to unpack there. I mean, in terms of um, what we do is triangulate the views of employers at scale. So about just over 1,000 employers have undertaken that employer standards framework that I spoke about earlier, with the 250,000 student voice, with then the 4,500 schools and colleges that complete their termly survey. So that kind of triangulation of the employer, young person, institution gives us some insight into where things are going. And I think what we're able to sort of show from that is that where employers are able to, and where sectors are able to do more in early talent, they get a reward. So where they invest in working with schools, working with colleges, getting involved in careers education in the way that I've just sort of described, actually some of the challenges that you've just outlined and some of the challenges that I've heard for many years from employers, sort of typical ones, young people aren't fit for the world of work, they start to dissipate because employers are not only employers supporting young people to get better, but they also have a better understanding of where young people are at. And I think it's that joint understanding that young people get a better understanding what they need to do to kind of flourish in the world of work, but also what employers can do to understand and nurture young people. It's that collaboration ultimately, and that's what we're trying to do: is connect businesses and young people through schools and colleges to give them a better start.
And that's where the name comes from, right? So it's really about careers and enterprise working together to support the young talent, or even people who are switching talent, or changing careers. And I like that ethos about trying to. I mean, we do it a lot. We have industry advisory boards who guide us in different forms as a university, and also in terms of the initiatives we run on behalf of careers for the country. And I guess, for me, we've talked about, how employers can engage more. But at the moment, with regards to, students, I'm talking all ages, including people that are way in their careers already and want to switch. Um, what barriers are they facing, in your view, at the moment, in trying to obtain good, prosperous careers within nascent markets like electrification, or, like I said, even net zero? What were the primary barriers they're coming across?
I think there's on the broader perspective, and I have to be clear, we work very closely with schools and colleges, and therefore that the kind of age group that follows on from that. But from my own experience working across all ages in terms of career development over quite a long period in different roles and different organisations, I think there's something there that you're talking about, Deepak, in terms of transition and transferability of skills. And uh, we're seeing the world of work evolving at a rate that I think is, certainly unprecedented in terms of recent times. It's clearly always evolved, and it's always changed, and it's always been dynamic. But the speed in which that is taking place now feels quicker. And I think the understanding that people have of their own skill and ability, but the ability then to transfer and adapt to different situations is one that is as important, if not more important, for older people already in the workplace as it is for those that are about to enter it, which is clearly our kind of immediate focus in terms of the work of the Careers and Enterprise Company. In both situations, I don't think we're talking about highly specific training for a particular job. It's that ability to navigate a number of different situations, its ability to transition, its ability to adapt and develop over time, and that is going to be increasingly important. So equipping people of all ages with the skills, supporting them to develop those skills, to transition to different roles, to different demands, is something that I think is critical for them, but also for the economy as well, because that's where productivity is kind of focused.
I think it's an important point that you hit there because, transferable skills, right, are very important, right? But we're not always aware ourselves that our skills are transferable. And also, additionally, you mentioned about, adaptability, right? The worst place, and we know this as teachers, and I'm sure you do as well, that the worst place to be is when you're comfortable. When you're comfortable, and that a lot of people get into that space, students do too, where they're just comfortable and do what they need to do, but they are comfortable. But that's the least productive place or the least ambitious place to be. And people tend to learn a little bit more when they're a little bit more uncomfortable or there are new challenges and stuff. So, from your perspective, you could say you can't really teach adaptability to a degree, right? You do that through experience. Are there particular things that your organization are doing is to give young people opportunities to try different things, right? To not fear trying different things, right? And being able to explore themselves. I would imagine that, 16, 17-year-olds haven't really decided what they're going to be doing, right? What are we doing? What are you doing or what we should be doing to support those kind of narratives?
Really, really important point. I think there are two things I'd want to say. Actually, to start off with, I would just quickly return to the role that teachers play, and something that quite a lot of teachers have been in themselves is they've gone into teaching because of all of the reasons that you sort of stated earlier, the passion for equipping young people with knowledge and skills and attributes for their futures. But they've sometimes been in that role for some time, and because of the pressures on them, have struggled to sort of see outside that. So the program that we've got for teachers has been something called Teacher Encounters, where we've taken teachers out into industry. We've supported them to link with some of those enterprise advisors, cornerstone employers, the employers that have completed their employer standards, to kind of show them, maybe for a day, maybe for longer, but just give them an insight into the evolving world of work that exists out there. And that's given them a greater ability to support their students to adapt and develop in the way. And we've seen that very directly. I think, coming back more specifically to your question about young people, there's a big ambition that we've got, that the government has got now around reimagining work experience and improving not just the amount of work experience young people receive, but the quality of work experience. And that, for me, involves starting earlier. So not just, a week placement in year 10 or the fourth year as it was when I was at school, but to have a progressive approach where actually in year 7, year 8, young people are exposed to quite a range of different employers, different sectors, different businesses, and then over time they kind of start then to get more exposure, but start potentially to narrow it down as their interests start to kind of become more refined. We know that generally that's the progress that happens over time. So, it may then end up with a placement, but that placement is deliberately designed to fit with what they're looking to gain, what they're looking to develop in terms of an understanding of that area. So I think there's a role for teachers, but there's also a role for work experience in terms of equipping young people with some of the skills that you've rightly identified.
I've got a question around trying to understand other players in the space, right? So, one thing we haven't talked about, right, is we talked about government, we talked about, schools and the students, but we haven't picked someone or a particular demographic that is very important to the student's life, and that is the parents, right? Um, what is, your thoughts around parents and supporting parents? Parents guide students or their kids a lot more than even teachers do to a degree. And there are lots of different things that parents are influenced by. They're influenced by their own backgrounds, their own experiences, their own culture, right? What role has parents got to play, or how do you involve parents in supporting your aims?
Really important point again. I mean, in terms of, I mentioned something at sort of towards the start, which was this framework, if you like, that schools and colleges working towards, which are called the Gatsby benchmarks. And it's a very specific sort of title, but what it encapsulates is a range of activities and best. It's a framework for best practice, and one of those very clearly is around the role that schools and colleges can play in terms of linking with parents, supporting parents to develop their understanding. You're absolutely right, Deepak, in terms of the importance that parents and carers play in both a good way and potentially at times reinforcing things that aren't that helpful. So the more we can do to support their development of the understanding of the rapid changes that are taking place, things like apprenticeships. I mean, that's another area that that's been a very dynamic area of development over recent years. And if parents don't have the understanding of what modern apprenticeships can offer, then at times that can also be something that can be quite restrictive. So there is a big program of work within the sort of system that's been set up that is about ultimately developing the understanding that parents have and their ability to support their their child.
And if I and I am a parent, if I want to know more about that, how do I do that? Right? How do I interact, right, with the careers and enterprise, company?
So the first point of contact is generally through the school, and obviously if you're saying your child is 7, and so we have got a program at the moment which is around supporting primary schools, because we feel that career-related learning should start at primary age. It's some of the stereotypes that we've implicitly sort of kind of mentioned are sort of formed at that age, and so first contact is with the school or with the college or with the institution that your child is at. You can find out more details about us on our website, the Careers and Enterprise Company, and that will give you more insight into how you can get involved, how you can find out more. We have a sort of resources centre that can signpost to a lot of organisations, because I mean there's so many amazing organisations in this space. You're right, with one of your earlier points. So we work really closely with lots of charities, lots of different providers across the country that are all engaging in different ways with parents and carers, with schools, colleges, with employers, and so it's sort of about connecting all of those dots, really.
Brilliant. And you mentioned earlier about the modern apprenticeship. Now, obviously, back in the days, we had a typical understanding, day release, right? What that might be like, apprenticeship programs. But we've seen the emergence of, as you said, the modern apprenticeships, and we've also seen higher degree level apprenticeships that have emerged quite a lot as well. Recently, they've released in my particular space, which is the battery apprenticeship program, which has only just come out into the market. But to a parent who's listening to this podcast, what is a modern apprenticeship? Why is it different to when they may have been an apprentice themselves? What has changed?
Yeah, so apprenticeships now are a fundamental part of the education and training landscape, and they are employment. Ultimately, they're employment with all sorts of different in all sorts of different sectors, and with all sorts of different employers, but with that strong and very clear mandated training element to it. And that's where the partnership is often between the employer and a training provider or an educational institution, including universities, as you're aware, Deepak. So it's there are a broad range of apprenticeships on offer, but is that partnership of being employed, having a very clear training program in place that ultimately secures the young person with an apprenticeship with a qualification associated with that at all levels. Going up, as you say, to degree level and beyond. So is a fundamental part of now of the education and training landscape. I've got. You mentioned about your child. I've got one slightly older who actually went. So she's just gone to university, but she went through a very, very competitive process to try to get a degree apprenticeship, and I was really proud of her for getting to the final stages of that, because I think there were about 2,500 young people that went for it. But yeah, was unsuccessful. So they're incredibly popular routes.
It's, yeah, firstly, congratulations. I know how competitive it is to get one of those, so congratulations to your daughter. But one of the things that is important is that it's already hard and competitive to get an apprenticeship. But one of the big barriers that all the students will face is completing an apprenticeship, retaining them. Modern students these days want different things in life. We're in the digital era. They want to have fun. They want to enjoy. They want to explore, be creative. How are the new apprenticeships that are ensuring they retain the student once they get their position? What does the modern apprenticeship look like in terms of making sure that the student feels like they want to be continue to be part of it, and so is supported through that journey right to the point where they do actually secure full-time employment at the end of it, but also complete their apprenticeship?
Yeah. So I think the relevance of the study and that applicability, so that they can see very directly what they are learning relates to their achievement at work. And I think that's a fundamental aspect of why apprenticeships are successful. Retention is increasing in the apprenticeship sort of space. So I think that it's an important question, and one that is being addressed. But it's when I visit employers that are offering apprenticeships, when I speak to apprentices themselves, I think what we see is a really powerful combination of that kind of learning, but also understanding what that learning is being applied to, and how it can benefit not only the individual but the business as well. So it's that's the route in my mind to increasing retention on those apprenticeships.
And looking forward a little bit, right? We've got, you're in contact with many businesses. What are the trends that you're seeing right now, or will see in the emerging next couple of years or so, in terms of career prospects? What are the markets that you're seeing, or the demand that you're seeing from the employer's perspective, within particular jobs, and also careers, but also the longevity in them?
I mean, I think there's a big big development really taking place, which in relation to employers understanding the challenges that they are facing and looking at some different solutions. And there are lots of challenges that employers face in all sectors, but one of them is productivity, one of them is competition, one of them is and another is responding to the emergence of disruption all over the place. And I suppose where we see really progressive employers engaging in this work, they are planning for that over the longer term, and they're sort of seeing how investing in their talent pipelines will ultimately give them a reward. It's not just a CSR thing; it's nature thing. It's about investing in early talent so that they can so that young people can come into their businesses with that sense of agility, with that sense of understanding that things move very quickly, because that's been young people's experience, particularly this generation coming through. And you think about adapting to COVID, adapting to the rapid increase in technology that's taken place over the last 10 years. It is unprecedented. And I think there are so many positive aspects that young people can introduce to the workforce if it's kind of correctly harnessed. Part of harnessing that for me is the engagement of business at an earlier stage, and that's when we see it happening, it brings so many great results.
Yeah. And your the career and enterprise company is government backed, and over the next few years, I guess my question is, what does government hope to achieve, right, through yourselves in the next few years? What's the aim here? What's the target?
Yeah, I've spoken about one of those aspects already briefly, which is this significant ambition around reimagining work experience and thinking about what a significant increase in work experience for young people looks like, what a significant increase in the improvement in work experience looks like. So that's going to be a big area of focus. We also have a very clear mandate to, and this is right, absolutely right in my view, to kind of focus on those young people that are furthest away, that need the greatest levels of support. So, um, you know, it, I'm not saying that we are a universal service in the sense of working with all schools, and secondary schools, and colleges across the country, but particularly targeting those that have the greatest levels of disadvantage, because I think there's something to be said around this agenda for around equipping all young people so that they're operating on a level playing field, and that's a really important agenda as well.
Brilliant. So we never have enough time for these things, as I always say. But ultimately, if you were to give some advice to students listening on this, or even parents, what would be the few things that they should take away from this, if they want to be part of a new and emerging space like electrification?
Yeah, I'm thinking back to your story, Deepak, and your journey on this, and thinking about how you made the most of everything that you've got and finding your route through. And that's about exploring. It's about trying to get as much experience as you can within the situation that you're in, asking lots and lots of questions, developing connections, developing your confidence as you go through that, being brave in that sense. So there's the support that is on offer from your school or from your college is improving, because we're working hard to improve it, and schools and colleges are at the centre of that. But there's so many things that you can do yourself to kind of make the most of your own ability and talent, and believing in it is the starting point, but then building out from that, kind of making those different connections, and using work experience to your advantage is something that I believe really passionately in.
Thank you. I think that the word that you said there, which resonates, I think, is be brave, right? Being brave isn't about being strong. Being brave is about being scared and doing it anyway, right? And then being able to, whatever comes across in front of you, taking the next step regardless of anything that's trying to stop you. And I think that having an organization like yourselves, reaching out, doing the work that you're doing, is so important in the landscape at the moment. And I'd really like to thank you for the support, and also on behalf of probably a lot of different organizations, the work that you're doing. But also thank you for joining us on this podcast, right? And I look forward to hopefully raising the awareness of the enterprise and career and enterprise organization, and hopefully will help a lot more people into a lot more prosperous careers.
Thank you, Deepak.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me on this electrifying episode of Switching On Electrified Skills podcast. Together, we'll shape a future that is powered by electricity.
If you would like to learn more about electrification and explore courses and jobs, please visit ershub.co.uk or connect with us via social media channels. Thank you once again for joining me today. Until next time, keep charging ahead and unleash the full potential of your electrifying skills.